So hello everybody. Just gonna go over some avenues of advocacy. Just definitely just first wanted to thank you for having me here and for giving me the honor to address individuals who are here for either yourself, for your families, for your loved ones, friends, or for the cause. I definitely admire the passion and purpose behind your mission here to fight against prostate cancer and ultimately ending prostate cancer. I did want to share a little bit about me. I am with Pfizer. My name is Yna Perry. I've been with Pfizer for 3 years, and my background is in public policy and organized medicine. Been doing that for over 11 years now. On a personal note, I'm a first-time mother, so I feel like I'm scared all the time, and navigating this healthcare system is complex and confusing. So I have a little bit of knowledge to what that may feel like. Wanted to go over some contents we'll be discussing today on advocacy, the why, the what, the who, the role of policymakers, and some tactics that we could put into practice. We'll be going over some strategies that could be applied. And then lastly, the power of relationships, specifically when politics are involved and how they interplay. So why advocacy? Advocacy is important because it helps to ensure that patients' voices are heard and that their needs are met within this complex healthcare system that we have. It involves speaking up for patient rights, promoting access to quality healthcare, and addressing any barriers or challenges that you may face. The addressing barriers and challenges that you may face is so important because it's very likely that down the line, someone else will face them too. So we want to identify them. We want to find a solution to make that easier for the next person to come. Advocacy can lead to changes in policies. So there could be a lot of positive changes, for example, around access to quality care. There's a difference between access to care and to quality care. So we definitely want to ensure that for all. We want to talk about policies around timely treatment, affordable medicine, investment in research, and the fostering of innovation, which could lead to cures. In all those instances, we want to ensure that the patient voice is represented. Overall, ultimately, the goal is to improve the overall patient experience. Everyone, including myself, wants to feel heard and validated and empowered when going to their doctor's visits, when trying to navigate all these financial bills that they have to encounter, what terminologies are used in the insurance practices. So it's important to advocate so we can mainstream that and allow avenues for people to be successful in those instances. What is advocacy? Advocacy is the application of pressure on the people and institutions that have the power to give you what you want. So it's fighting for what you believe in and for what you deem to be fair, because everyone has their own definition and their own interpretation of what fair is. What is advocacy? So policymakers essentially create laws. They introduce legislation, they vote on other lawmakers' legislation, so they have the ability to help colleagues get it passed or not. They create government-funded programs, they propose funding for specific services, or they do budget cuts. So all of this happens within the legislative process. That's how a bill becomes a law. I studied this in school, and truthfully, it does not translate from textbook to practice, but it's just good to know the overall concept of it. So you can then highlight what needs to happen in order to get things across the finish line. Advocacy is also facing adversity. It can be incredibly intimidating, and uncomfortable and confusing all at the same time. The process will leave you with a lot of unanswered questions, and that definitely leads to frustration and a loss of interest. But let me tell you that once you get there, you keep going because that just means you're on the right path. You may have heard this before, and I say this mostly, I think, just for me to keep reminding myself, but it's having a seat at the table than being on the menu, right? No matter what, laws are going to be made that affect every single one of our lives, on our healthcare journeys, to our business practices, to what our kids are taught in school. So all these decisions are going to be made, and it's best for us to give a voice and represent our community to what we feel based on our own experience, what should be done, what should be fair. Who are advocates? So time and time again, I've run into a lot of the same reasonings as to why people don't want to engage. So I just wanted to touch on that. So time and barriers is a huge one. I don't have enough time in my schedule, or I'm facing some barriers. One thing that I would recommend is just taking one step, and it could be something as simple as retweeting, or I guess I don't know, tweet, it's not Twitter anymore, X, reposting. We'll just say reposting something that Zero puts on their platform. They're a trusted entity, and you have your own network. So it's something as simple as reposting a message that can amplify that across to many other people, or it could be sharing your story. It could be one time doing perhaps you writing your story, maybe working with Zero or with other partners on placing it in an op-ed. And in that case, it could then be shared among different platforms, and it definitely inspires and motivates others to do the same. So taking one step can go incredibly far. So barriers. There's a lot of occasions where people are definitely immunocompromised, or they face financial barriers where it's not easy to pick up life and move and meet them where they are at. However, in this post-pandemic world, we have been afforded the ability to meet virtually. Communication is widely accessible, and it's using those resources in order to get the message across. Experts only. A lot of people may think that, oh, I don't know politics, I'm not the best, and I'm not familiar with policy, or even in the healthcare setting, it's too confusing. I get it. I'm with you. However, you are the expert of your own story. No one else can share what you have to share. And it's that being genuine that comes across and resonates with lawmakers, because they are people too. Another reason why people don't want to get involved is because it's too bureaucratic. And it is, it is. It's very hard to navigate, but that's why Zero is here as a patient advocacy organization that can help you facilitate and can help you navigate those areas. So who are advocates? Why it should definitely be you. So as mentioned before, you have your own experience or a personal connection to the issue. Your story and your testimony, no one can take that away. And usually in those settings, it's where we encounter an aha moment, and it's in sharing that story, sharing your testimony, where it could potentially allow people to see differently and to get them to take that into consideration when making decisions. Lawmakers on the day-to-day meet with lobbyists. Lobbyists are paid staff, which they're there doing their part. Of course, they, want to speak on behalf of whoever they're advocating for, but it's just not the same. Your personal connection, if you have family, friends who are going through something, you speak about that's what resonates. Time and time again, I've seen on either the floor or in committee hearings when legislators are debating these topics, they do bring up stories I heard from my constituent that they had to face X, Y, and Z. Why? Because stories stick. They can remember it, and it puts a face, it puts a person to an issue. So those are really important. Who are advocates? It's also advocating for communities that could be affected. So high risk groups. So veterans, for example, are at high risk. So it's creating awareness within their communities to get early access to screening, to get the information they need to be able to make sure that their lifestyles can be healthy in the long run. It's also Black men. 1 in 7 Black men will be diagnosed, and they are 2 times more likely to die. I read that and I was in shock. Those numbers speak volumes. I'm married to a Black man, and I've already encouraged him to go get a screening, like go schedule your prostate screening, to which he always replies, like, I'm not even 40 yet. Like, and at this time, with how the healthcare system is, I'm like, we're not going to get an appointment now. It's going to be way down the line anyway, because it takes forever to secure things. But it's creating awareness to your loved ones, it's creating the urgency to take control of your own health. And again, I could be an advocate, you could be an advocate, but sometimes I may not be the best messenger. In the case of my husband, for example, I don't know if it's just a wife thing, but sometimes it goes in one ear out the other, and he needs to hear from someone that he looks at it differently, who shares his experience, because they could say the exact same thing, and that resonates, that sticks, and he's all over it. So we definitely need each other. The more advocates, the better. Policymakers. So I wanted to share a little bit of some guiding questions policymakers may take into consideration when they are faced with a bill or an issue that constituents are bringing up to their attention. First, they ask themselves, is this good policy? It just depends on how they are introduced to the issue. Sometimes it depends who introduced it first, which group was it? How does this affect my district? How does this affect my district? So what are the demographics within their area that they represent? Perhaps maybe outlining high risk communities, right? So what is the percentage of veterans within their districts? That's something that they can take into consideration. Does anyone back home know or care about the issue? So the more that people speak on the same thing, the more it kind of gets raised to the top. If there's less of an internal force asking them to weigh in, sometimes it's not made a priority, and action doesn't ensue. Who supports and who opposes this? This gives them an idea to potentially who they can upset. There's more, I think 10 out of 10 times, there's going to be both sides. In order to do good policy work that you deem is right and fair, it's going to go against what somebody else is thinking. So they want to be able to just see what organizations, what individuals are speaking out, so they can understand how it can then politically affect them. They ask themselves, will it hurt me or help me politically? They are elected officials. They are put into office by having votes and by getting donations and by having volunteers and all of that. So they do want to know if it's going to perhaps help their ambitions moving forward. So strategies. These are just different ways and tactics to how you can get involved and how you can use your voice, starting from voting. So there are platforms that elected officials use, them and their staff, to see who has voted. So they can pull my name up and they can see my voting history. They can't see who I voted for, but they can see, like, oh, look, every election cycle she voted, or like, oh, look, she took 8 years off. So that matters because they are elected officials, and it does mean something when it's your constituent who votes that says we should advocate for a specific issue. Emails such as action alerts, potentially Zero could send something out and it could be ready to go in one click. There's room to personalize. It gets to the office, it gets recorded, it gets tallied. It's a good way to create mass mobilization. Phone calls. Phone calls are interesting because you can't avoid phone calls. If you call a capital office, they have to answer. So in order to be mindful of it, it's just being quick and, being able to say, I'm a constituent, this is my name, here's my address, and this is what I'm calling to get the member to and urge them to support, et cetera, bill or et cetera, funding, et cetera, issue. And in these cases, scripts can also be provided. I use scripts for everything. So even if it's 3 lines, if the scripts is what's needed, I'm sure that there could be people who could facilitate. Patient stories, as we touched on, it could be used in a variety of ways. It's like the number one tool that we all have is our own stories. In-district visits are important too. Sometimes this is the most effective way to get their attention because it's their comfort home, home sweet home. When meeting with constituents back in their districts, it gives them a sense like they're hearing, one of their own. And this is a very effective way to just get that face time and see them. Town halls are another important avenue because that's where legislators go and discuss all the issues that they are encountering, that they see as priorities, that they are hearing from. So it gives you a sense to where they're at on not just healthcare, but on overall issues and policy recommendations where they want to be. Public testimony. So this is showing up to a committee, showing up to a hearing, and voicing your support or opposition to a specific bill. These all get logged, and it matters because they are all reviewed, and it speaks to who's showing up for this. It's definitely an effort to get there, and definitely an effort to sit in hours of committee hearing to wait for that 10 minutes of presentation, but it goes very far. And then last but not least, lobby days. These are my favorite. It's a tried and true method. It still moves the issue, and it speaks volumes because it takes a lot of planning. It's a lot of resources, and it requires a lot of flexibility. It says a lot when you're sacrificing your own time and money and just to be there and to advocate on behalf of an issue with all your other supporters and all those who share the same passion. Meeting accomplished. So this is a little bit of how I maybe would define a successful meeting. One is first doing your research. All of the elected officials, lawmakers have bios somewhere, maybe on their websites. It's reading a little bit about them, what their profession was before, what their aspirations are, and usually include something personal like what their family may consist of, what they like to do for fun. So it's good to know a little bit about who you're meeting with prior to actually meeting with them. Staff members. So a lot of times legislators do get pulled last minute into a committee, into another meeting, and definitely not recommend protesting to meeting with staff. Staff are incredibly important, especially in a world of term limits. Sometimes they're there longer than the members, and the legislators, they hire experts in different fields to give them the recommendation. They become that trusted voice. So it's definitely important to meet with them and, meet with them like you would an elected official. Listen and hear. It's very important to kind of get the timing right. Sometimes in a meeting, you're only allotted maybe like 15 minutes. So it's sharing your story in a concise and compelling way, but then also allowing time for them to ask questions or just for you to hear where they are at. So if you're meeting for 15 minutes and you speak for 14, you're not going to be getting any feedback, and you kind of want to know where they stand so you can report back, or so you can know, or so you can follow up and answer any questions that they have on their mind. Making a specific and a direct ask. So there's a difference between, hey, what are your thoughts on early access to prostate screening versus, hey, are you going to vote yes on this bill? Very important to be direct, because they may be with you on the overall issue, but it doesn't mean that they are going to be voting. And voting is what translates into the passage of a bill or not. Security commitment is hard, but it's incredibly worth the ask. They may say yes, they may say no, but at least you asked. And eventually they're going to have to, I guess, per se, show their cards and vote, because it's all public. So you can definitely hold them accountable. And then lastly, it's leaving a lead behind. Sometimes what we found helpful is leaving like a one-pager on issues that you discussed, so then they can go over and review, or if they have any questions, leaving contact information or a website to where they can look for more information. Contact information is great for you to also ask for. So in ending a meeting, it's asking for their card. And I've seen this. I'm not the best at it, but I've seen it to where people are just like, oh yeah, can I have a card? And can you write your cell phone number on the back? That, I think, in my opinion, is like the goal. Many times elected officials are in closed door meetings and they're not accessible. It's not easy you can't reach them through their office number or through social media. I mean, maybe social media, because they all have their phone. But if you can text them, best time, that's the best access point. And then digital and social media. So this is not my area of expertise, because I don't have any social media. I have an addictive personality, so I could be on there way too long. But as you see, with the chart, the percentage of Americans that use it is incredibly high. It's a free and useful tool that everybody has access to. Not everybody, I guess most people have access to. And in the world of politics, it's used very, very, very frequently. So social media, it informs the public, it persuades policymakers, and it mobilizes network of advocates to act. So in using any of this, just make sure you're okay with anything that you're being posted, because it could definitely be reposted or published somewhere else. Keeping it short, sweet, and concise is the best way. Visuals help as well. Tagging relevant people. So if you meet with a lawmaker, it's great to at them and maybe take a picture afterwards and post that, thanking them for their time, or they sit on a specific committee where they're going to be faced with all the healthcare bills. It's tagging them, asking them, and urging them to vote in support of a specific bill that you feel will make a world of a difference. It's following legislators, following your elected officials. You're just given access at that point to everything that they care about and everything that they want to bring attention to. It's a good way to know what really is driving them and what they want to be known for. And then also just knowing that on the staff end of a legislative office, they are actively monitoring. So they do monitor specific hashtags, maybe bill numbers, or keywords. They monitor when things are reposted or op-eds that are happening in their community. They just want to be in the know. So if the member does ask, they can then, share what is going on in the digital world. So the power of FaceTime, this is essentially relationship building. Elected officials are people, so maybe you have commonalities with them. You may already know them. You may go to the same gym. You may go and attend the same church. Your kids may play on the same soccer field. So it's creating those opportunities to just introduce yourself and, give the ability to form strong relationships. And if you don't know them, there are ways of natural engagements to meet them. So the first one would be to sign up for their email distribution list on their websites. They have areas where you can sign up and be notified of in-district coffee hours, for example, where they open the office from, I don't know, 1 to 3. Come in at any time, just introduce yourself. Those are great opportunities that doesn't have to be on the calendar. You don't have to do a meeting request, and you can just go and have a casual encounter. It's also important to communicate naturally. Most of the time, legislators are bombarded with a lot of requests, a lot of asks right before there's a vote to be held. So it's just keeping frequent communication that's key. And then becoming a resource, offering them your help and your assistance, if they ever have more questions about your story or they want to know what implications you ran up, it's good to be a resource to them, someone that they can also count on. And lastly, key takeaways. This all obviously goes without saying, but one, it's demonstrating respect. There are going to be a lot of times where frustration is met, but with policymakers, it's important to be respectful just because even though some may not align with your values per se, most of them had a different profession prior to being in office, but they left that to be a public servant. And there's so much time and sacrifice that they have to make, and it takes them away from family because they have to be at the Capitol and then they come home. It's a lot of travel. It is a lot to take on as a person, especially if you have a family. And then the amount of public scrutiny that they get as well. Everything that they say, everything that they do is ripped apart, written about, put on social media, and I'm sure that can take a toll when their lives are picked apart. Then reputation. Reputation is everything. It's being truthful. It's being credible. It's okay to say, I don't know when a question is posed or that you misspoke. It's okay coming back and saying, like, actually, I wasn't right about that. Your reputation is something that no one can take away from you, and it just speaks volumes. And then paying it forward. So lastly, and more importantly, you matter. Your story is valuable. Your efforts will be recognized. If not immediately, the next generation will be thankful. So keep on advocating. It's all worth it at the very end. I just wanted to thank you so much for your time. And I'm here to be a resource. I might not be an expert, but I'm in this world and I'm happy to always be of assistance. Thank you.